Hello heroes and villains, welcome to Multiverse. We got a bit of a bombshell yesterday. Apparently Meps is leaving DCUO Online, so I was going to prepare a video talking a bit about Meps, the relationship I had with him, and wishing him good luck in his future projects. But then, as I researched the story a bit, turns out that the real story is actually... It's not so much that Meps is leaving DCUO Online, it is actually that there's a bunch of layoffs that happened at Daybreak Studios. Actually, there's a whole bunch of layoffs that happened all across gaming, and it was a tough story to research because basically, as I tried to look for more information about what happened, I kept on bumping into articles from 2019, 2018, even as far as 2015. The only article I could find about the whole thing was an article by Kotaku, but it wasn't specifically about the Daybreak layoff, it was about pretty much all the layoffs we had in 2024 so far in the video game industry. So they're talking that over 6,400 people were laid off in various gaming studios since the beginning of the year, or as the title of the article says, in the last 38 days. So the story is much bigger than just Meps, and it is not Meps that did quit DCUO. Meps was not fired from DCUO. He was laid off, as well as a bunch of other employees from Daybreak Studios. At this point, we don't know how many people from Daybreak actually were laid off. We don't have the numbers for that. But we'll come back to that a bit later. Let's start by talking a little bit about Meps. Full disclosure, I did not have much of a relationship with Meps. Some of you guys seem to think that I know Meps personally. Not the case at all. I barely had some interaction with Meps over the years. And it took a long time before I had some actual interaction with Meps. For a long time, I had no real interaction with Meps, other than maybe on the forums. I'm sure he answered some of my posts sometimes, or sometimes I would comment on some of his posts, and that's pretty much as far as it went for pretty much 11 and a half years that I played DCUO Online. Although there is one time during that time where Meps did ban me for about a week. Basically, like it happens way too often on forums, I got a bit carried away in an argument with someone else, and Meps banned me for a week, and he told me, don't do it again. So for a long time, I did not really have any interaction with Meps, and I kind of became aware of Meps through Friday Night Legends, when he was making those live streams. I think it was, I forget if it was every Friday or one Friday a month or something like that, but basically whenever there was the Friday Night Legends with Jens Anderson, that is pretty much where I realized that there was this guy called Meps that worked at DCUO Online. And that is also where I learned that his actual name was Ted Stone, because of Jens Henderson, who sometimes would say his name in a funny way. I can't really do impressions, so I won't even try to do it, but if you go back and watch some old Friday Night Legends, you'll see Jens Henderson saying Meps' name in a funny way. Or should I say you'll hear it? It doesn't really matter. So anyway, so for a long time, I did not really have any interaction with Meps until about a year and a half ago. And there was some issues to log in on the test server. I posted as much on the forums. And then that's it. That is when Meps pretty much contacted me for the first time. Basically asked me what was wrong, and if I could, whenever the game would crash, usually there's an error code that appears. So I simply asked if I could, whenever the game crashes, the test server crashes, just to write down the code and send them the code that appears when the game did crash when I tried to log in. So it pretty much started like that. So I pretty much would test whenever there was a new seasonal or a new game client, and then send him whatever result I had, if the game had crashed, the codes, which character I used, and all that good stuff. There's a couple of times where the seasonal was basically pushed back because of that. Basically at some point there was the seasonal where we just could not figure out why the game would crash, and there's even one time, a couple of times, where actually we would go to Discord to be able to talk directly as opposed to exchanging messages. So that pretty much was the extent of my collaboration with Meps, whereas I would do a bunch of testing and send him a result, or a couple of times we would talk through Discord while we were doing some technical support to try to see what was wrong with the latest seasonal or the latest game client. And since then, there's only two favors that Meps ever did for me. Sometimes you guys would ask me to ask Meps some stuff to try to get some favors or some changes. Doesn't work like that. Sadly, Meps, only twice did Meps agree to do something for me. The first time was he changed my name on the forums. Ironically enough, I had asked him years and years ago if he could change my name on the forums to Multiverse to kind of match with my YouTube channel. At the time, he told me a reply along the line of if I want to change the name on the forums, I could simply create a new account. But I guess after doing a bunch of testing and technical support with him, later on he did agree to change my names on the forum. So that is the first time he did me a favor. And the second time is that he gave me the House of Legends lair on the test server. Normally you cannot get the House of Legends lair on the test server, but sadly the lighting of the lairs we had on the test server was terrible. There's one time especially where I tried to show off some base items for the Valentine seasonal, I think. It was the seasonal where we got a whole bunch of base items that had to do with painting, and we could barely see those base items in the lair I had. So I asked Meps if he could give me access to the House of Legends on the test server so that I could show off the base items with better lighting. So this is the two favors Meps ever did for me. He changed my name on the forums and he gave me access to the House of Legends lair on the test server. So that is pretty much the extent of my relationship with Meps, doing a bit of technical support with him or testing out some of the seasonals on the test server or stuff like that. Although Meps has been involved with the DC Universe Online for as long as I've been playing the game, so it will be a bit strange, a bit weird to play DC Universe Online without having Meps involved. So there you go guys, so Meps was not fired, Meps did not quit, there was a wave of layoff and sadly Meps was caught in it. You have to wonder who is going to replace Meps, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. I know that there are people probably doing the happy dance right now. There are people who did not like Meps. Heck, there's some YouTube channel that's pretty much dedicated to making videos where they make fun of Meps. So obviously, if you were banned from the forum by Meps, or even worse, if maybe your DC Universe Online account was deleted, then yeah, you're probably doing the happy dance right now. And even though Meps did ban me once for a week, I am very sad to see him go. So let's take a minute to say goodbye to Meps, wish him good luck, and thank you for everything you did for us. So the only article I could find was from Kotaku, where they're talking again not specifically about Daybreak, but about the gaming industry in general. But today we'll just take a look at what they mentioned about Daybreak. But if you guys want to see the whole article, I'll put a link in the description down below if you want to read the whole thing. So the first thing we can notice is that they do not know the amount of people that have been laid off. For the other studios, you actually get numbers. Like there's studios where they laid off people in the hundreds. Here, we do not know how many people were laid off from Daybreak. The second thing we'll notice is that they do mention laying off senior staff. Now, you have to ask yourself, why would they do that? You guys might recall some time ago, I did make a couple of videos about the devs and about the true leadership at Daybreak, which actually pretty much came from EG7. In a nutshell, some people were worried that there maybe wasn't any leadership at Daybreak because they were missing key high-level positions. But I countered that by saying that it doesn't really matter because the true leadership actually comes from EG7. The true decisions are most likely taken by people at EG7 and they are simply executed by the people at Daybreak. So it could be simply what those layoffs are. They might just be getting rid of some redundancies. It's another thing I mentioned way back when in those videos is that usually when a company takes over another company, they'll get rid of redundancies. So let's say they both have an accounting department, there's no reason for that. So sooner or later, the accounting department of let's say Daybreak would pretty much be let go and replaced by the accounting department at EG7. The same would happen with the legal team, and the same would happen with pretty much any other teams. Although they could decide not to get rid of the whole team, they could decide, let's say for the accounting department, they could get rid of most of the accounting department and keep just a few people and add them to the EG7 accounting department, for example. So it could be simply what those layoffs are, getting rid of redundancies and quote-unquote getting rid of the fat. And how does Meps fit into this? Maybe they already have a community manager that's taking care of some other games. Like maybe there's already, let's say, an EverQuest community manager, and maybe they've decided that instead of having one community manager for DC Universe Online, maybe the EverQuest manager could become the DC Universe Online manager, the PlanetSide 2 manager, and more. So basically, it could be that they've decided that instead of having one community manager for each game, maybe they could have one community manager that would manage all the games. Or if they don't have one community manager for all the games, at least one community manager for multiple games. So one community manager could manage DC Universe Online, EverQuest, and PlanetSide, and another community manager could manage Dungeons and Dragons Online, Magic the Gathering, and some other game. But in a nutshell, instead of having multiple people doing the same job, they could decide to at least merge some of those jobs together and then get rid of the redundancy. And it is the kind of things that happen all the time. Basically, taking multiple jobs and merging them into one job happens all the time when a company gets purchased by another company. It is an easy way to lower the expenses of the company. And even if the company is profitable, like it doesn't matter whether the company is profitable or not, they will merge whatever jobs they think are redundant. So even if they make money hand over fist, if they realize that they have two community managers and only one community manager could do the trick, and they'll merge the two jobs together. It's sad, but that's how it is. And we have seen the Doomsayers come out of the woodwork and see that as pretty much confirmation that DC Universe Online is dead, or that DC Universe Online is in maintenance mode. I understand why some people would believe that. Yes, we have been having less content in DC Universe Online for the past 2 years, roughly since we got the House of Legends. Already having the House of Legends, and even worse, the Clamp, did hurt the game. Basically, they had to rebalance the entire game with the Clamp, and it was an ongoing process. You may have noticed that even after they did add the Clamp to the game, then they kept on trying to balance and rebalance the game, or adjust the character stats because of the Clamp. So that alone did put a lot of strain on the devs, and for extra fun, not even a year later, there's a Jackster that left with 1,000 devs. Yeah, I know, he left with I think 900 devs. But the Clamp giving extra work to the devs because they had to rebalance the whole game, and a whole bunch of devs leaving at once, that did hurt the game quite a bit. And to this day, they did not recover from that. They've been trying to recover from that slowly but surely. Sadly, for the past 2 years, we've had only 2 DLCs per year. Like last year, we were supposed to get 3 DLCs. And sadly, as you guys know, we only got 2 DLCs last year. So already the devs have been struggling for the past 2 years. And it's no secret. A lot of people have been talking about it. I've been talking about it. And sadly, obviously, this will not help. We had been waiting and waiting for a dev update for some time now. Normally we should have had a dev update sometimes in January. Although sometimes we did get the dev update in February. But for some reason the dev update was pushed back and pushed back. Actually, it wasn't pushed back, it never was mentioned. So time passed and passed and passed and no dev update. So you had to wonder why, what's going on? And odds are this is probably what was going on. So hopefully now that this news broke out, hopefully there will be the dev update soon, and hopefully they will be able to talk about this at least a little bit and let us know what's going on. I guess we're gonna have to wait and see for that. Now, will this affect DC Universe Online? The answer is quite simply absolutely yes. At the very least, it will affect the morale of the team. When you work in a studio and half the staff gets laid off, sadly no one's happy about that. Even those who manage to keep their job, you always wonder, like, am I going to be next? Is there going to be a new wave of layoff? And am I going to be laid off? So at the very least, it will affect the atmosphere of the studio. So the studio will be, let's say, less pleasant to work in. And some people might still be terrified to lose their jobs, at least for a while. So it won't create a very good working environment. So at the very least, the studio will be affected that way. Although again, depending on who's leaving the studio, some people will have to pick up the slack. So whoever is going to be left in the studio will have to do their jobs, and probably part of the job of someone else who was just let go. For example, if you use MEPS as an example again, they will probably look within the studio to find a new community manager. Maybe they'll take the community manager of Dungeons & Dragons Online and have him be the community manager of DC Universe Online as well. I guess we're gonna have to wait and see for that. I guess we'll find out soon enough when the new community manager introduces himself on the forums. I assume sometime next week. So yes, it will affect DC Universe Online. At the very least, it will affect the employees that might be worried to also lose their job at some point. or the employees who are sad to have seen their friends go. It happens. Like when you work at some studio and when you work there for a long time, sometimes your coworkers become more than just your coworkers. Sometimes they actually become your friends or more. Who knows? If Meps had stayed a bit longer in the studio, maybe someone in the studio would have become his future wife. We'll never know. As for producing the content itself, we don't have any information on that front anyway. We don't even know who's being laid off, so we don't know how it's going to affect production, and we don't even know what the production schedule is. We know that we should get a new DLC at some point, but when? Will we get it next week, next month, next summer? We have no idea at this point. So sadly, we don't have enough information to make an educated guess as to how it's going to affect production. But we do know that they were struggling to try to get back to producing 3 DLCs per year, and obviously they were not able to do that last year. And again, we do have the doomsayers that are saying that this proves that DC Universe Online is dead. Dead. Sadly, you have to look at the whole context. It is not just DC Universe Online. A whole bunch of studios are letting go a lot of people. So again, this is much bigger than just DC Universe Online itself. A lot of studios right now have been affected by waves and waves of layoffs, and sadly, I wouldn't be surprised if this is not the last wave of layoffs we see this year. There might be other layoffs in other studios as the year goes by. I can guarantee you that the people at Rocksteady right now are probably terrified, because seeing how Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League is performing or not performing, I can guarantee you that the people at Rocksteady are terrified right now of losing their jobs. And there are other doomsayers that are saying that now the game is in maintenance mode until it shuts down later down the line. The game is not in maintenance mode. Yes, we had less content last year and even the year before. It has nothing to do with being in maintenance mode. They are just having a hard time getting back on track after losing a whole bunch of devs. Yes, I understand it's been almost 2 years. You would think that by now they would start to recover from that at the very least. Sadly, it would seem that they still did not recover from that, and even worse, now they're losing even more people. So the game is not in maintenance mode. Sadly, it would seem that 2024 will be a bumpy ride, as well as 2023 or 2022 for that matter. And with this new wave of layoffs, we can probably expect more or less the same amount of content we had last year. I guess we're gonna have to wait and see for that. So hopefully this new wave of layoff will not hurt the game too much. Also, we do know that there is a new producer on working on DC Universe Online. Obsidian Chill made a video about that. Go look up at Chill's video if you want to know more about that. So hopefully the new producer is getting it up to speed. Hopefully the layoffs won't affect production too much. And hopefully we'll get the new dev update soon. I guess we're gonna have to wait and see. Why is it important that we get the new dev update soon? It's quite simple. Nature hates a vacuum, or nature hates a void, whichever you prefer. And sadly, whenever there's a vacuum or a void, it gets filled. So if the devs do not fill that void of information we have right now with actual information, you can be sure that the doomsayers will fill that void by saying that the game is dead, or that the game is in maintenance mode, and the game will shut down in the next 3 weeks. Already we saw that with the case of Meps. Some people were very quick to say that Meps was fired, or some people were saying that Meps did quit, but it actually was a wave of layoff, and sadly Meps got caught in it. So again, sadly, if the devs do not give us information, sadly people will make up their own information, and some of that information will spread like wildfire. I guarantee you we will see a whole bunch of videos on YouTube saying that Meps was fired, and that the game is dead and will shut down in 3 weeks. So there you go, guys. So this is pretty much what I know about the situation so far. There is a thread on the forums and the DCUO forums if you want to go see what people are saying about that. There's also a thread on Reddit. I don't go to Reddit, but I am aware that there is a thread on Reddit also talking about this. So if you want to know more, you could go to the forums or you could go to Reddit. You decide. Once we do get some actual information about what is going on, I will let you guys know about it.